Hey everybody, welcome back to School Sucks Live. This is hour 2. We are talking about psychopathy and a film called I Am Fishead.
I Am Fishead.
Which is about psychopathy. And with me in the studio tonight, we have Cory and Osborne.
Hey man. Hey, just to let the listeners know, if they were to look up this movie on YouTube, they spell Fishead as one word with one H in the middle.
Yeah.
They do.
It's Fishead or Fishead.
Fisheed.
Yeah. Fisheed.
I wonder what their intention was for doing that.
I don't know.
I don't know if I would assume there was an intention.
Or perhaps it's just an alternate spelling that
It's probably an
we don't know
acceptable
anything
spelling,
about.
I would imagine.
Interesting, because you wouldn't want two H's in a row. No word has
Because
two H's in a row.
it looks kind of weird when you actually put the two H's in there.
Or isn't it just two words though? I mean, like, you wouldn't say manhead with one word.
I will from now on.
Yeah, seriously. You know what was I think now might be a good time before we get into it again to express my biggest disappointment. Now, Osborne, earlier you said you hated the music they played over the end credits.
Oh, it was awful.
And there's a perfectly good song that must be in the public domain, which is called Fish Heads.
Oh my goodness.
Which would have been the perfect end credit song.
You think it would?
What do you think it's about?
What, the song?
Yeah.
It's about fish heads.
Just real fish heads, like
Yes.
from fish?
Yes. It's a gag song. They used to play it on the Dr. Demento radio show all the time.
I'm a big fan of that Gaffigan bit where he's like, he doesn't like in the restaurants where they serve the fish with the head still on.
Yeah.
And he goes, mind if I watch while you eat my body? Oh, Gaffigan, he's the best.
I am fish head.
So before we went to the break, the last two segments we've devoted to reading the checklist, Robert Hare's checklist on what the traits are of psychopaths. We're going to finish that up. We're going to bring a caller.
We actually finished it already.
We did,
The checklist is gone. So factor 1, all that stuff about aggressive narcissism measures how well they cover up and integrate all of their violent and antisocial activities. And factor 2 is the socially deviant lifestyle part, which actually discusses in specifics like what their antisocial behavior is. And if you don't have enough, at least 3 different traits they score all the traits in this list from 1 to 3. And if you don't have at least 3 of them rated at 3 in each category, then you're probably not actually a psychopath. But you have to have stuff from both factors. Because if you have the antisocial behavior, but not the narcissism, then you're not a psychopath. Sorry.
So I'm thinking that during the after show, perhaps the 3 of us should take the psycho test and see which of us are in fact psychopaths.
Well, you know, it occurred to me a couple times. We were talking about this in the School Sucks pre-show that we always do to test everything out before the show and have a little fun. That I feel like, you know, maybe it was a maturity issue, but I felt like I exhibited more of these traits when I was a young man in my treatment of other people and some of my behaviors. Because I think that something also important to point out right here, which I don't think we've done yet, is that most of the studies about psychopathy took place in prison.
Yes.
So these are people who, chances are, were not as smart as other psychopaths, were not as resourceful, were not as adept at avoiding desperate and dangerous situations, even though psychopaths like dangerous situations. So that was how more of the focus got turned towards the John Wayne Gacy, the Ted Bundy types. There was another serial killer hitman that kind of become, outside of the movies, the pictures that come to most people's minds when we think of the word psychopath.
Yeah.
But
because most of us will go, oh, he couldn't possibly be a psychopath. He doesn't have parts of chopped up women in his freezer.
He's got a tie on. Yeah. You know, I mean, like for some people, it's that simple.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that adding that checklist into the show was helpful. So now we can see, I mean, geez, you really just described 2 presidential candidates.
Are there more than 2?
Well, there's Gary Johnson.
I know that. It was...
You were being kind of like a mainstream guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, there's Gary Johnson. And
how many more presidential candidates than that do we need?
Oh.
Two is all it needs to have there for there to be a choice.
That's called a choice, folks. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think the reason that so many of the studies on psychopaths were done by psychopaths in prison is because usually you figure out someone's a psychopath after they've done something horrible.
Yeah.
Because most psychopaths won't put themselves in the position of being analyzed by a competent psychiatrist. Or if they end up in that position for some reason against their will, they're clever enough and good enough at what they do to fake their way through it. Because if I was a psychopath, I am sure I would know exactly what was on this checklist, and I would avoid displaying any of those behaviors. But once you've already been caught, doing something psychopathic and you're in prison for it, kind of the jig is up.
Sure. And if you're a psychopath who's operating at a lower level in the power pyramid,
right,
then it's more likely that you are going to get caught because you don't have all of this public approval,
right,
and tradition and systems and practices kind of normalizing what you do.
The higher you fight your way up the pyramid, the more untouchable you become.
Yeah. So you're a lawmaker or a job creator, just to be fair, just to deal with the corporate world, because I think there is a lot of I know we said that there was too much of a focus on the corporate world compared to the government world, but I think that their examples in the film were sufficient to establish that this is certainly something that is pretty common in the Wall Street crowd.
And I think the distinction between the corporate world and the government world is becoming more and more indistinct.
It's another false dichotomy. The government fights corporations, and corporations try to, lobby and control the. I mean, it is basically one and the same.
But that whole process is a very well-oiled machine.
Sure. Now I have an LLC. When I say corporation, I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about Segal CII, Osborne's company. We're talking about the companies that send people to K Street.
So
right.
All those other corporations.
Yeah, not me.
not me.
What was one of those things? Not accepting responsibility? Everyone else but me. Not me. Not top-tier academic consulting. We only have 3 lobbyists.
Lack of remorse or guilt.
So anyway, I wanted to bring Travis into the conversation. He had some comments about this. Travis, how you doing tonight?
Doing great. Thanks for having me, Brett.
My pleasure. So what are your thoughts?
Well, you guys brought up a lot of interesting points. Of course, how if someone does happen to have somewhat of a psychopathic mentality, the fact that they can get involved in a bureaucracy that can give them ever more power, where in fact, their whole job is just to keep the whole charade going. As Larkin last week, brought up the whole charade of power, that legitimacy that the government potentially has or apparently has. It's like it just. Your whole job is to keep the charade going, fool as many people as you can, benefit as much as you can. And another interesting point, I was reading actually on Wikipedia the etymology of the word psychopathy, and it's like you're psycho as in your soul, even your whole being, and then pathy meaning a disease. So a lot of it, in my mind, it's like you get joy out of people suffering, something about other people suffering, especially if it's in a covert way, some way that you've underhanded somebody and you get this joy. There's a German word called, I'm not going to butcher this, I know, but I think it's called Schadenfreude or something.
Schadenfreude.
Schadenfreude.
I don't know, man. Don't ask me.
I know how to spell it. I'm not entirely sure how to pronounce it, but I'm familiar with the term. Yeah,
I know I've said this before.
You guys know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. I know I've said this before, but I get YouTube videos made about how bad my German pronunciation is. Hey, Travis, we got to take a quick time out, but we'll hold you to the next segment. We're going to continue with this conversation, and I want to talk more about the etymology of that word. This is School Suck Live. We will be right back.
Free speech is
Oh, and I finally weighed myself today. I haven't weighed myself in about a month.
Oh.
I've lost 47 pounds since the beginning of June. That's when I started eating low carb.
Holy crap.
I know.
That's a lot for 2 months.
My pants fell off at the airport during my pat down. It was really embarrassing. I mean, getting patted down is embarrassing. But going through the naked scanner in the don't shoot position is also kind of embarrassing. And on principle, I usually go for the pat down, but then my pants just fell right off. So I bought new pants today. This is the second time I've bought new pants since this is going really well.
I've been waiting for that to happen. I've been hardcore for the last couple of weeks, but I haven't lost any pounds.
Well,
it's bumming me out.
In an opposite story, I grew some tits from...
Whereas I'm down to like an A cup.
Yeah,
Right.
I'm up to an A cup.